Welcome to another episode of Diversitas, a podcast at the crossroads of diversity, business, and culture. Today, we are delighted to have one of the most interesting men in the world, Steve Jamison, who is the owner and proprietor of Blue Soul Shoes. Blue Soul Shoes is the premier men's boutique shoe store in the Philadelphia metropolitan area. It focuses primarily on purveying luxury Italian and European footwear and has been doing so since 2007. Blue Soul Shoes is a foundation of Philadelphia's famous Chestnut Street retail corridor, and we are excited to talk to Steve today about his career path, the challenges of the retail industry, and perhaps he will let us in on some secrets of his success. Welcome, Steve.
Hey, Mike, how are you, sir?
Thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it. So let's get into it. For the uninitiated, tell us, what is Blue Soul Shoes?
So we curate merchandise from all over the world, different manufacturers, different designers, and we look for high-end quality merchandise, unique designs to offer to the fashion conscious male in the city and also the country.
How do you define high end? What does that mean?
So the segment kind of begins where the materials are much better quality, the workmanship is much better, and the designs are much better. And it doesn't necessarily mean a high price necessarily. It can, but not often, or not always. But high end is basically those things where you're marrying those qualities and workmanship and design all in one.
And so, who's your average shoe purchaser, your average consumer? Who comes into your shop? Who orders from you? Who's what kind of customer do you look for?
Well, we don't look for any particular customer because we're available for all men. Our average customer is the guy who's fashion conscious, but also for the guy who's looking to expand his sense of style and sense of creativity. So we offer unique products. So even if it's a classic, like a classic design, it's an updated classic. So it may be wingtip design, but it may be some kind of twist or uniqueness about it that separates our wingtip design from any other wingtip design that you're going to find at other retailers. And so we're looking for, I should say, who come to us are guys who are just that, who are looking for a unique product, guys who are looking to expand their sense of style and fashion.
So you started Blue Soul in 2007. How did that come about? What led you to starting Blue Soul?
Sure. I mean, it's something I've always wanted to do ever since I was a kid. I've been in retail since I was about 16 or 17 years old. I worked for a teacher of mine. She had a sneaker store that was in my neighborhood where I grew up. And she asked me one day to work for her. And that's where I got my initial start in retail. But the bug has been with me again since I was a kid. I've always loved fashion, always loved shoes. And the opportunity came in 2007 after I lost my job. And if I'm going to do it, I might as well do it then, because the option was to start the business or go work for someone else. So that was it.
So I remember we're both from Philadelphia. And when I was growing up, there was always like one or two guys who, their fashion sense was like above everybody else's. And I don't know whether, when I would see these guys, I would be like, I don't know how they can afford all this stuff. At that point, I was young, so I didn't know there are all kinds of ways to be creative with how you dress. And, they would, for example, they would wear, Joe Palmieri pants, or, they'd have, fancy shoes or whatever. It seems to me that you were one of those guys. Is that accurate? Were you one of those guys, like when you were in high school, like you dressed better than all the other dudes, and and the girls were kind of like circling around you? Well, plus you had a little job too.
So yes and no. Yes, in the sense that because the other guys were more into sports and things like that. And I wasn't at the time. And so I kind of stood out apart from the rest of the guys. So in that sense, yes, In fact, I was voted most fashionable or best dressed in my high school.
Of course
So,
you were.
which seemed kind of odd. But I also, because I grew up poor, I didn't have a lot of resources. So
Right.
I just learned to be more creative with what I had. So yeah, yes and no, because I didn't have like the, quote unquote designer clothing that a lot of other guys could afford to buy.
So you didn't wear Joe Palmieri's? You didn't have a pair of Palmieri's?
I couldn't afford them.
or or Gazelle glasses?
Oh, I had one pair that somebody tried to steal from me because they were hot back then.
Yeah, man.
That I
So
saved a
how
long
did
time to
you
buy.
how did what was it in you that aspired to have this fashion sense? What, like, how did that, where did that come from?
It came from my mom. My mom gave me a pair of fashion shoes. They were a pair of cream and brown and cream Pierre Cardin two-tone shoes. I put those suckers on. I walked into the room with them, and I got so many oohs and ahs, and people loved it. And I loved the experience. I loved the feeling that I got from wearing them, and it just boosted my self-esteem. It did it for me. And I wanted
Right,
to, find a way to recreate that for other people. When they put our shoes on, just for them to know that they feel better because they look better.
right. How so you grow up in Philadelphia, you graduate from school, from high school. What when did you get your start in the retail industry?
So after, I went to college. I went to the University of Pittsburgh. My plan was to go to
Oh, you
law
went to
school.
Pitt?
I went to Pitt.
I went to CMU, right?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
All right, right in the hood.
right in the hood. Yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh. But my ultimate plan was to go to law school and practice law, but only so I could make enough money to open a retail store. So I came out of Pitt and I just skipped the law school portion, and just went right back into retail. So I started working in different department stores like Bloomingdale's, Bowman Taylor, which is right in Center City. Used to be right in Center City, but then moved from there to some high end boutiques like Wayne Edwards. I worked there for a little bit, and a couple of other retailers too. But
Was
that's
Wayne Edwards your last retail job before you started Blue Soul?
it was my last retail job. Yes, before I started Blue Soul Shoes. Yes,
Does
absolutely.
Wayne Edwards still exist?
They do.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah,
I don't think I knew that.
yeah.
Um, so you leave Wayne Edwards, you start Blue Soul. Now, when you were at Wayne Edwards, because one thing I know about you, and I'd like for you to expand upon it, is that the buying piece of this is crucial, right? And
Yes.
so I know that you do a lot of traveling to buy your goods.
Yes.
Did that start? Did you start that process when you were at Wayne Edwards or some other retail operation, or did you just start that when you opened up Blue Soul Shoes?
No, I didn't do that at Wayne Edwards at all. Actually worked at Wayne Edwards twice. So not long after I graduated from University of Pittsburgh, and also right before I opened Blue Soul Shoes, I was there two different segments. But as far as buying is concerned, I didn't get the opportunity to do any kind of buying until I worked at Botino. And Botino was another high-end men's boutique, shoe boutique, and I was there for 16 years. And
Oh, wow. Okay.
that's where I picked up my buying experience.
Okay. And did you travel for Bettino?
I did. I traveled regionally, so only to New York City is
Okay.
where I would travel for
Okay.
Botito.
Okay. So when you started up Blue Soul Shoes, um, were you only traveling in the United States for your product, or did you then expand? Like, when did you go to Europe and that kind of thing?
Probably about 5 years in, after starting Blue Soul Shoes, that I start to travel to Europe, and it
And
was
what led to that happening?
just having conversations with different vendors, different designers, understanding the market better, and realizing that if I wanted the more unique product, the more special pieces, things that aren't typically offered in the United States of America through other retailers, I had to go to Europe because that's where the source is. That's where they show. Because a lot of the vendors who were showing, or designers who were showing in Europe, they weren't showing here in the United States. So if you wanted to get their product, you had to go right to the source. So.
And so how does that work? Like, when you do these trips, and I know you do trips at least on an annual basis, like what's your goal? Where do you go? Who do you meet? Like what's that whole process like?
The process starts with a trade show. There's one particular trade show. It's the largest trade show in the world for shoes. It's called MICOM, and that's in Milan, Italy. It's held twice a year. And in addition to that particular trade show, but I also have appointments for different showrooms and different designers. So while I'm in Milan, I also, again, see different designers, different manufacturers. So I set up appointments. So it's like a cycle that I do. So it's the trade show and then appointments.
Okay. Do you only go to Milan, or do you is that the only place to go? Or are
No,
there
not
other
at all.
places to? Okay.
Also in Italy, but there's also Florence and also Venice.
Okay. Okay. So you start Blue Soul Shoes,
Mhm.
and starting any business from scratch is hard. Starting a retail operation, as I've learned recently, is a beast.
Yeah.
So when you came out, like, did you have customers already who were kind of waiting for you to come out? How did you develop your client base, your customer base?
The client base was developed through years of working at other retailers. You kind of develop good rapport with customers, relationships, and they kind of I don't want to say they follow you, but because you have such close contact with retailers, going from one retail store to another, they as they discover where you are, they do kind of follow you, but it's only if you offer the right product for them. So it's not just
Mm.
a matter of I'm jumping from store to store and here I want you to buy this and they buy it, but you have to have the right product in that store as well.
And so, what does that mean? What's the process when you have customers? Do they give you cues as to what they like, and then you follow up with that, and you kind of take mental notes of what your customers like, and that when you go to make these trips to wherever,
Mhm.
you have that in mind as you're purchasing.
So that's part of the process. For me, it begins with what I like, and what I
Ah,
like doesn't necessarily mean that it's something that I would wear. But I have such an appreciation for fashion. To me, it's like art. And so when I talk about curating different pieces and designs for the store, I really mean that sincerely. Like I go and I look to bring in different looks, different segments of footwear and clothing as well, and accessories for the store. And so it starts with what I like. If I don't like it, I don't bring it to the store. So when a customer
mm,
say, "What do you think?" I'm giving them my sincere answer. I
mm,
like the shoe. I love the shoe. And so it
hmm
starts there. And then also, as you said, I do take mental notes. If a customer says to me, "I'm looking for a black shoe with a I don't know, a strap on it," something like that,
hmm
a sort of generic general term. I do make mental notes because if one guy says it and another guy says it and the third guy says it, well, that's a trigger to me that I should start looking for this thing that they have in mind. But it still has to end up with what I like. And so if I see something that I like and it has that element, those elements that the customer's looking for, I'll buy it.
So, two questions that pop into my head. First of all, so your store is at least in part a reflection of your style. Is that fair?
Yes, yes.
And so, describe for the audience your style. Like, if you had to put your style in words, what would that be? What would that be?
Eclectic. So I love everything from classic suiting to funky, edgy shoes and casual wear, things like that. Like I'm 57 years old. I have a mohawk with gray in it, so you know that's who I like. I like edginess, funkiness.
You
Um,
just made me feel bad that you told me that you're 57 years old, dude. Thanks a lot. I appreciate that. Go
no
ahead. I'm
problem.
sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
so that so that's my style. I love it all. I love it all. Sneakers to classic shoes to nice tailored suits, and so I love color as well. Color is so wonderful. It's so it's such an expression of yourself. It just allows you to be so creative. So
So 16 years, in retail is a long time, and
mhm.
kudos to you for that.
Thank you.
Um, what are some of the keys to your longevity?
Not operating in fear, probably the biggest thing. Being patient, um, staying humble, realizing that you're here for a purpose, whatever that purpose is. For me, it's just realizing that I do have a gift to offer to the people who support me, the people who buy from me, and it's just to, offer great quality merchandise, great service,
Mm.
and just allow customers to experience what I experienced when I put my first pair of fashion shoes on, and also to help them along the way.
So, as I was thinking about this interview, I was thinking about the fact that Philadelphia is a more conservative fashion um, culture
Mhm.
than, say, New York or some other places, LA probably. Um, eh, has that been an impediment to you in terms of you identifying the consumers that you want to buy from you?
Somewhat. There are a lot of things I'd like to offer to my customer base, and I'm hesitant sometimes to bring it in because I realize the market in Philadelphia is not like New York or like LA, like you said, um,
Mm-hmm.
which it's more expansive there. But it's also my job to kind of push my customer and guide my customer into the direction that I want them to go. To understand that fashion is not just a cookie cutter idea. One of the rules that I have is for myself and then for my employees, for anyone who works for me, I said, first you learn the rules, meaning the rules of fashion, and then you discover ways of breaking those rules.
Ah.
So that's what we teach our customers. The same thing. We understand that you have a particular way of dressing, but here, let us guide you into understanding that fashion is really about breaking the rules and wearing this item instead of the thing that you would traditionally wear with a
Hmm.
pants or shirt.
How would you define the rules of fashion?
It's pretty basic, and there really are in some cases written rules. Like let's say the most formal way of dressing would be for a man a tuxedo, and a shoe that you will pair with a tuxedo is, let's say, a patent leather lace up or
Right,
a velvet slipper or loafer style.
right.
Well, if you want to be more creative, you do, let's say, a no tie or no bow tie. Maybe do a skinny or thin silk tie instead of a patent leather lace up. Maybe you could do a patent leather boot, things like that. Or maybe a different color, like instead of a black shoe, you do a really deep navy blue shoe with that.
Mm, mm.
Kinds of things you do.
Um, so you have, I think, primarily stuck with into selling shoes, but I know that you have expanded a little bit in terms of your offerings in the store. Talk about kind of how you've expanded, not only how you've expanded, but why you have not gone into, so for example, suits or other areas of fashion.
Mhm. So we've expanded into offering pants and shirts, mostly sportswear or let's say sporty styles, and it's an extension of myself for the most part. Again, because I love fashion so much, I didn't want to limit myself or my expression of myself just to shoes. Another thing that happened was, or in the past, is customers were always coming and asking, like, "What do I wear with this particular shoe?
Mm,
Like, where do I go to buy something to match this shoe to complement this shoe?" Well, after a while, it's like, okay, well, rather than have them go somewhere else and have someone else explain to them how they could wear a particular shoe, I figure, well, why not offer them what I think is the best option for this particular style or this particular style of shoe? And so it's allowed me to be more creative, more expansive in my offerings, and I love the idea.
and where do you source that stuff?
Also in Europe and New York trade shows and Chicago trade shows too. So
It's interesting. You talk about Chicago. When you go to other cities, what's the most fashion forward city in the United States, in your opinion?
in my opinion, New York.
Okay.
New York has to be. It's the largest city in the country, and they just have probably a greater diversity, of course, because of it, and because it's more diverse. People are just more open, and you just have more opportunities there. It
Right.
doesn't feel, even though it's a smaller market, doesn't make it a bad market.
Right.
For me, I think it's certainly better. It could be better, but I think it's just a matter of retailers being more creative and more adventurous, and also customer base being more open to what retailers in Philly have to offer.
Well, it's interesting because, in New York, so I used to live in New York for a time, and there's so many things to do, and more importantly, so many places to be seen, right?
Sure. Mhm.
Philadelphia, not so much. I mean, it's just not as many places where if you get dressed up,
Mhm.
that you know that people will check you out, will
Sure.
maybe compliment you, etc. And that's especially true, I think, post COVID. So that leads me to the next question. How has your business changed since COVID started, since COVID happened?
It really hasn't changed much.
Okay.
If anything, it's made me more free to do the things that I like to do. Just be more expressive, more creative, more adventurous. Because quite frankly, COVID has taught me that anything could happen at any time.
That's right.
Can go out. I could lose my life.
Yeah,
Speak that way, but it's just a fact.
it's a fact.
So, why not just take more chances? Just like live life to the best that you know how to live. So
Yeah,
just do that. Have fun.
I love that.
Mhm.
So this name of the show is Diversitas. So we talk about diversity issues a lot on this show. I am interested to get your perspective on being an African American man in this particular business, and how and whether that's had an impact on how you do business, how people view you in the industry. Talk to
Sure.
me about that a little bit.
Sure. It's it's been challenging in the past, particularly not so much now. I think because my attitude is different now, but I remember first starting out in the business. When I say starting out, meaning in the buying aspect,
Mm,
because that's probably the most important part of the business, buying. And I remember going to trade shows with my then boss. And when I would go to trade shows in the past, I would dress up, nice clothing, like pants, shoes, socks, socks, sorry, shirt.
right.
But the idea is to be impressive in how you present yourself, so that the vendors and the designers and the wholesalers would take you seriously.
Mm,
And I remember just being looked over so many times, exchanging or engaging with different manufacturers and wholesalers, and people looking past me and talking to my then boss. But time and time again, my boss would turn to me and ask me my opinion about what I thought about
mm,
the particular product.
mm,
So they just weren't picking up on the fact that I was an important part of that process, and so they
mm,
shouldn't just regard me that way. So fast forward in my own business, I started changing my attitude, and I remember going to different trade shows, and I remember one incident where it was just horrible for me at that particular time, but not anymore. But I remember, and this is when Obama won the presidency, and going to
mm.
a trade show, and one guy yelled out, "Hey, Obama!" And I thought, like why? I understand, I'm one of a handful of blacks here, but why? Just
Especially since you look nothing like Obama. Okay.
of course. And so it's like it's silly stuff like that that would happen in the past. But now my focus, or my approach is this: I'm there in jeans and a t-shirt, literally jeans and a t-shirt. I don't focus on what they think about my appearance, but best believe they have since then have learned my reputation.
Right.
My reputation has spoken for itself throughout
Right.
the I've been voted best international buyer by the Italian Trade Commission.
Mm,
Um, have received so many accolades locally in Philadelphia, and so
mm,
when people hear the name Blue Soul Shoes, they know who I am now, and
mm.
it's no mistake that this is what I've worked to do, to make sure that when I walk through these halls, when I go to the showrooms, that they know who I am, they know that I'm serious about my business, and that's it.
Yeah, and I just want to say in passing, this whole jeans and t-shirt thing, come on, man. First of all, it's probably the best, most luxurious t-shirt that you could ever find. And then the jeans are like, just laying on you like, butter, right? And then you're wearing your shoes. So
Well,
there
that's
you go.
true. That's true.
Come on, man. Come on. What what uh what do you think is the most challenging aspect of being in retail?
The most challenging probably is uh, capital management.
Mm.
A capital intense business.
Mm-hmm.
Have, at least at this level, you have to have a lot of money for rent, for your inventory, for your other overhead, salaries, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not careful, you will go out of business within one season.
Mm-hmm.
You have to make sure you have good cash reserves. You're managing those funds well. You're paying your
Mm-hmm.
bills on time because if you
Mm-hmm.
don't, then you're not going to get subsequent orders filled from other manufacturers and vendors and wholesalers. So that's probably the most challenging aspect of the business.
In that industry, are there credit arrangements with manufacturers and with shoe manufacturers, other fashion manufacturers?
Absolutely, definitely.
Okay. Um, when you started, did you have a business plan before you started? Did you put together a business plan?
I did. I did because initially because I thought I needed it. I thought I needed it for a loan. I discovered that it really didn't matter as far as at least from my approach, that I really didn't need it for a loan. When I went to a bank for several banks for a loan, they really just wanted one thing: collateral.
Mm,
So if I didn't have the collateral, it didn't matter. They just
mm,
took the business plan and kind of like thumbed over it and said, "Okay, what do you have?"
right. What can we secure this debt with?
Right.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah, but it was extremely helpful for me only because it allowed me to write down in detail the things that I never even thought to spend time pondering over. So
Right.
it's extremely helpful for me in how I manage my own business.
Would you, did you would you look back at the business plan periodically to kind of gauge where you are with where you kind of plan to be or what you plan to do?
No, and I liken it to I believe it was a quote that Mike Tyson said one day. Like everyone has a plan,
Until you get punched in the face.
you get punched in the face. And that's what this business is. It's getting punched in the face multiple times,
Mm,
but understanding and knowing how to navigate when you get punched in the face. You have to pivot, you have to go left, go right, up, down, just to stay forward, stay
right.
moving.
So one last question on this piece. What advice would you give, a single piece of advice that you would give an entrepreneur entering into kind of the retail space?
um Fear, don't let it hinder you. Work past it, push through it. It will stop you. It could actually cause you to have a heart attack.
Mm,
Allow it to. It's something I experienced. I didn't have a heart attack, but I remember just before opening the store, I thought I was going to have a heart attack, but it turned out to
mm,
be just a panic attack. I literally drove myself to the emergency ward at Temple University Hospital on my way home one day from doing work here at the store, preparing to open up. Um,
mm.
but just that aspect, just learn not to allow fear to overtake you, and just you have to learn how to push through it, and just realize that in the end, there's something greater than what you're experiencing at that time, and which is greatness in you.
Yes, I love that. All right, so we have, I appreciate that. We have a second segment that we do with all of our guests where we learn a little bit more about you. These are kind of rapid fire questions that I'm going to ask you. Okay, you ready?
Sure.
One word that describes you.
Adventurous.
Adventurous. Okay. The best piece of advice you ever received.
Wow. Manage your business according to God's plans, not man's.
I love that. What's a talent that you have that most people don't know you have?
um, Talent that I have. I can draw.
Oh, okay. Okay. Do you draw?
I do occasionally, but kind of doodling. But not lately. But
Okay. By the way, what did you major in college?
well, there was no such thing as pre-law at Pitt, but there was administration of justice, with a minor
Okay.
in Black Studies in Spanish. So
Okay. Okay. What would you describe as your biggest success?
repeat the question.
What would you describe as your biggest success?
My family.
Okay. How about biggest failure?
Biggest failure. Wow. Uh, Biggest failure. Mm, it's a good one. Biggest failure.
Well, that's good that you have a hard time thinking about. Man, they come immediately to mind for me. So that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, maybe because I just don't have any regrets.
Well, there you go. There you go. How about this?
Mhm.
What book has had the biggest impact on you?
The Bible.
Uh-huh. And finally, who is your favorite musical artist?
Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson, the king of pop.
Yes, sir.
Steve Jamison, thank you so much for being a part of our show. We really enjoyed it. We wish you the best. We wish you another at least 16 years of success with Blue Soul Shoes. Thank you so much.
Thank you as well.
And to our audience, thank you for being a part of this show. We look forward to continuing the discussion and keeping it going. Until the next time, take care.